Hi, this is Terry Bach, and welcome to the It's My Time Now, How to Redesign Your Life on Your Terms. For women over the age of 50, it's often a time of awakening, kind of a coming out of a fog, if you will, realizing that it's my time now. You might have been busy up until now taking care of family or your job or business, but you haven't necessarily been taking very good care of yourself. So you may be looking back at some of the things that you wanted to do, you thought you wanted to do earlier in your life, but you still haven't done those yet. Or maybe that has shifted for you, or maybe you just don't have any idea what you want the next part of your life to look like. So I have brought together some amazing experts on the topic of women over 50 and redesigning your life on your terms. Each of our experts will be talking about this topic from their own specific and unique point of view. So today I've invited Dr. Valencia Ray as our expert. So welcome, Valencia.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Valencia Ray is a trained functional medicine physician whose medical practice is focused on health and well-being. She helps busy women overcome stress and burnout, stop annoying health symptoms without scary drugs, lose weight easier, and experience greater vitality, connection, and confidence. So, welcome again. I'm excited to talk about this. It's such an important topic.
Thank you, Terry. It's a pleasure being here. Yes.
So let's start out by having you explain a bit what a functional medicine physician is, because many people don't know.
Right. Yeah. And I can understand. I was just speaking with you and saying, wow, this year will be the 40th anniversary of my starting medical school. Oh, my goodness. And I didn't find out and understand about functional medicine until maybe about four years ago or somewhere in that range, 3-4 years ago. And so essentially I was trained in the conventional system. I was an eye surgeon in my former life. I had a busy brick and mortar medical practice in Chicago. I did that. I was focused in that area for over 20 years. Okay. And then I sold it because I'm purpose driven. And sometimes it's felt like a burden in my life. It's like, why can't I just stay here? Everything's going so well. But it just something internal to me. And I followed what I felt was a calling, sold the practice, and went on this adventure and pulled together a lot of pieces. But ultimately, I was looking for what I now know is functional medicine. I didn't know it existed, though. Okay. So there was a lot of, in that gap, there was a lot of exploration in the space of neuroscience and nutrition, and even did some leadership coaching in there mixed in. But I can see how it all has come together now that I have found functional medicine. I'm able to take all of my experience, both from the conventional world to this experience of the mind and the body and the food as medicine. And so what functional medicine is that I did have to formally retrain, because you can't just make that leap just because you have an MD behind your name.
Right.
And it helped me to understand food as medicine, getting out of the way so the body can heal itself, understanding so many different natural-based systems of healing, and how to get to the root causes of disease, not just to put a Band-Aid on it by giving medications that suppress symptoms, because from my point of view now, these symptoms are the body's cry for help. And if you just shut it down and don't deal with what's under it, you can really be setting yourself up for more chronic disease.
Exactly.
So in that process, in that journey, I started another business, in functional medicine at this point, and most of it is telehealth at this point as well. And what I did, when you go into functional medicine in the training, you figure out what is your niche based on knowledge base, your passion, the pieces you want to pull together.
Sure.
And it just naturally fell in line for me. I have this focus on what's called the 4 key stressors.
Okay.
Why stress? You know, how did I go from an eye surgeon, brain,
Exactly.
all that to this? Well, in a way, if you think about it, first of all, being an eye surgeon where there's no room for error can
Yes.
be stressful. And at
Yes.
the time, my children were being born. I had 2 children, and I had figured out very early on I wanted to be there as well. So I went through what I can look back at now and say, like, wow, it had to be some intuitive guidance and all that, because I was able to figure these things out. And so focusing on stress has become the understanding is inclusive of my own journey.
Okay.
Educating people on what these 4 key stressors are that cause 95% of chronic disease.
Wow.
And how to become more self-aware so that you're able to navigate this thing called stress with more wisdom.
Right. So can you talk a little bit more about how stress is associated with chronic disease?
Yes, I used to wonder about it myself, even in the conventional world, because I would come across these statements that chronic stress caused 90 to 95% of disease. And I really didn't understand that back then. Now that I'm in functional medicine, I totally understand it, because when we think of mental, emotional, that's the main area we think of stress. But even then, we're not realizing mental, emotional is literally triggering your hormones and inflammatory agents in the body, because emotion is very, very powerful, for one thing.
Yes.
And
yes.
the emotional body will affect the homeostasis and the imbalances in the body, for one thing. Then there's a gut and brain connection, where your gut is off balance. Inflammation can cause anxiety and depression. And one of the key stressors is inflammation. So we have mental, emotional, we have inflammation, things in the environment, processed foods. And when I say things in the environment, heavy metals, chemicals in your water, all of those things contribute to inflammation. The third key stressor is glycemic, where we don't think about this, but when we are snacking late at night, when we are eating too much sugar, processed foods, when we are skipping meals without doing anything to listen to our body's call for needing energy, and so it starts robbing it from other aspects of our body and damaging our adrenals, causing prediabetes. All of those things tie in. Autoimmune diseases can fit into this picture as well. And then this fourth area of sleep is totally neglected. We're on our devices late at night, throwing off our melatonin, throwing off circadian rhythm, which is important to our health and prevention of chronic disease. So those are just a few examples, but pretty much I can just see clearly, while genes might play a role, they are not our destiny, because I also study nutrition genomics, and we can affect our gene expression, literally on upregulating and downregulating expression, so that it can affect how your health manifests, in your body. And when you have this empowerment and this understanding, then you can take back your own control over your health. And I think that's really important in this system we're in right now.
Right. Yeah. So you're saying that even if there's a genetic, like everybody in your family has had diabetes, it doesn't necessarily mean you need to, because lifestyle is important and
huge
things. Yes.
Absolutely.
Totally agree with that.
Yeah. Well, it's even in my own personal experience, but I help patients with it, clients with it all the time. But even speaking to my own experience, before I found functional medicine, I had a lot of annoying symptoms with all normal testing. And I knew that wasn't right. And then I also had some intuitive things going on. And well, make a long story short, once I was able to access functional medicine testing, which is totally different, and understand the interpretation, all of that, very life changing. Even my hair grew back. I was having big time hair problems.
Wow.
Scary hair problems. Like as in having to put on a wig at one point. I'm not
Wow.
it was not good.
Wow, that's amazing. So you mentioned the 4 key stressors. And I'm guessing because we're talking about women over 50 that you work with symptoms of perimenopausal and menopausal women. So how do those stressors, those 4 key stressors apply to these
Okay.
symptoms?
Yeah, so my clients and patients are generally, of course, there's already always an outliers on either end, but they're
Sure.
usually from 40 to 65, busy women, still working even, of course, or either they may be busy at home, et cetera. And then we hit these menopausal years, and it can be a different experience for different women. It's not all the same.
Sure.
But if you've been really stressed, busy, neglecting yourself for the sake of others, be it your children, be it our parents, etc., and you are burning both ends of the candle, not sleeping well, it all blows up as your estrogen and progesterone start to drop. And one interesting factor that I didn't realize was that 2/3 of all Alzheimer's patients are women.
Oh.
And it's not uncommon, that it's more common by a lot as they're hitting menopause, even in their 50s, getting brain fog and cognition issues. And so that doesn't get addressed. And when you look at the fact that these 4 key stressors are actually within our control to a great extent by learning, being aware of what we're thinking about ourselves. Are we thinking, oh my goodness, I'm 50 now, I'm getting old, and thinking that somehow it's age is a linear progression, and it really is. And I've seen that with my own eyes.
Yeah.
People who were much older than I thought they were, or they were much younger than I thought they were. Okay, so it's very pliable.
Right.
And these 4 key stressors, when you're aware, you can avoid so many pitfalls that are in our society right now around disease care. It's about disease care is where we are. It's not about prevention. It's not about reversal of chronic.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's about band-aiding. So when you're in the menopausal, perimenopausal years, when estrogen, which is a memory hormone, frankly, starts to fall, it can trigger cascades more susceptibility to inflammation, weight gain. What's typically never checked, I have yet to see someone just show up and they had a fasting insulin check done. Well, I didn't do it either until I found out how critically important it is to inflammation and hormonal balance and those issues that lead to weight gain and prediabetes and adrenal issues. Well, if you check that and take care of it early through lifestyle education, food reevaluation and education, certain natural supplements, you literally can reverse it and stave off or never even deal with it. It depends on, life is unpredictable, but I can tell you, you get off of that train of prediabetes and going into diabetes. And that's metabolic syndrome, which, diabetes is a part of, and which plagues perimenopausal, menopausal women, is something that you really can move the needle on when you understand these 4 key stressors and how to manage them.
Wow. And can you say again what the 4 key stressors are? I got emotional.
Yeah. So there's mental, emotional,
Okay.
and mental emotional is driven by perception, actually. Okay, it's not.
Yeah.
If you were in the middle of a war zone and bombs are going off, well, that's going to frighten your fight, flight, freeze response.
Sure.
Just because you literally are in a life-threatening situation. But outside of that, it's basically our perception. It's the narrative. It's where we put our focus. What are we looking at? What are we believing? What are we telling ourselves about it?
Exactly.
Okay, so that's mental, emotional, and emotional resiliency is something that I find we have to be trained. We have to have develop a skill, because it's not natural, because of the way we're socialized, most people fear their feelings, or feelings are made to be bad. And
Yes.
therefore, and that's why I'm putting more and more focus on, starting this year, community and healing, and learning and growing together in community, because it's hard to break these patterns just out there on your own. And part of it is re-education, and part of it is just, group support and learning. So there's mental, emotional, and then the order that I had said earlier, because you mix it up, I said inflammation, a second.
Okay.
Inflammation, they're all kind of interconnected, because mind can trigger inflammation, sugar, and glycemic, and lack of sleep.
Right.
And they all kind of talk to each other, but they can be one portal more emphasized in you than the other. So we would start there
Okay.
in that portal. So inflammation, again, is processed foods, sugar, using the wrong oils to cook with, et cetera. All of those are very inflammatory examples. Those are just examples. Glycemic would be number three. So, or
Okay.
when you think about the adrenals, that runs your energy centers in your body to a great extent. It's a major energy center, and it's affected by insulin and glucose levels
Okay.
by a lot. And if we are eating random foods that have high sugar content and things that maybe inflame our gut, and now all of that is getting thrown in, there's more inflammation. So that would be the third one. Hormones, all of that. And then the fourth one would be insomnia or sleep.
Okay.
So meaning when we don't put enough emphasis on the importance of sleep and make that a priority, we think we can go and go and go. And I've been there. I used to, there was a 4-year stretch of time where I routinely went to bed at midnight and got up at 4:30. And I could be sometimes in the surgery operating room at 7 a.m. Okay. And so you can imagine, and I would work really crazy until 3 o'clock. Now it's time to go pick up the kids or something. And I don't even know how, I know I couldn't do that again.
Right.
But I had to fix my adrenals when I came into functional medicine.
I bet.
I didn't even know they were as out of balance as they were, because I had no testing in the conventional system to really track it.
Yes. Okay. That's great. Let's talk about self-care, because I know that there's a lot of resistance with women in particular, I think, but particularly over 50 generation, taking care of themselves. They're kind of used to taking care of everybody else. Why do you think they resist it so much? Well, I put myself in there. Why do you think we resist it?
Yes. Well, it's partially, this is another part of that mind-body piece that I'm so fascinated in, and I have some visions to help in that area, in my unique way of looking at things. It's socialized more than anything else. Meaning, I went through that period, of course, myself, and
Sure.
I wouldn't be sitting here if I hadn't figured it out, to be honest, because I used to have some issues that were brewing up that I can look back and, knowing my own data, were not going down the right path. So the problem is, though, is that we're conditioned, frankly, to see our worth completely connected to what we are doing for others.
Exactly.
And frankly, sometimes bluntly and sometimes subtly shamed if we think of ourselves, but it's really, if you stop and think about it, like the oxygen on the plane analogy, put your mask on first.
Exactly.
Because how can you drive your kids around all of these events and show up for meetings and et cetera, if you're worn out?
Because you're,
so there's that. Pardon?
Oh, I was just going to say, we're kind of running on empty while we're trying to take.
Running on empty. And it's also about prioritizing investments, as far as I'm concerned. Sometimes we have our priorities out of whack, where we'll buy something before we will take care of ourselves, or we look out there for all the answers instead of the wisdom from within. And therefore we wait, it's like pay now or pay later. So you either take the time to really retrain your brain and understanding how you think about yourself. Self-love is not selfish. It just means self-acceptance, essentially, because if we have this program in our head that our value only comes from doing, giving,
Exactly.
it's going to be hard to slow down and rest and reflect and regroup and what's important to you. What is your next step? Because the children, my children are now in their 20s, getting in that mid to later 20s, which is like kind of shocking in a way, but it will come. It will
Right.
come. So yeah, you don't want to lose yourself in the process, or else, life is, we really do have this life expectancy to 120 potentially. I'm
Wow.
seeing people going into their 90s, and they actually are a handful, not many, but they don't even have real medical issues, to concern themselves with as much, and they
That's
go to
great.
sleep and don't wake up.
Yeah.
So if we can do that in the midst of the disease care system and lack of knowledge and all of these,
Exactly.
how much more could we
Yes.
do?
Exactly. I know I work a lot with beliefs, limiting beliefs. And what I have seen, especially with women, because I've worked with some men too, but for women, there's always that belief of not deserving. I don't deserve more, or I don't deserve to be happy, or, depending. And it goes to that conditioning, or that what we've learned often as kids. And it's probably not the message our parents meant to give us, but
Right.
but somehow,
It's unconscious.
yeah, it is very. And so it feels really true. So that's the big one to get over too, I think, is that deserving. So we can take better care of ourselves. So do you have some
Yes.
tips of self-care that you could bring up?
Yes. So I thought about this, and I could easily say that the typical things we hear, writing your gratitude journey, a journal, take salt baths, and play some music, and use essential oils, or carve out time for walking and exercise and all those things. And I'll let someone else give those tips, because meditation and all that, yes, it all matters. But the three I want to give have more to do with mindset, actually, and retraining our perception and reconditioning our brain, which is more like a computer, or our computer is more like our brain than we actually realize.
Yes.
And so the first one I would say for that self-care is this call to own your own health empowerment. If the system worked, we wouldn't see the data we see. 70 and climbing % of the population having obesity issues. And obesity is not about body shaming or your body. Obesity literally triggers these chronic diseases I'm talking about.
Yes.
So it's not about being a certain size or any of that. It's really about understanding how just sitting at the computer all day and not getting up in the evening to go take a walk, or feeling like you are taking responsibility for your health instead of just handing it to your insurance company referred to doctor system, which is really all about the Band-Aid approach. So number one is waking up to realize we have to be in control of our own health empowerment. That would be one. And that's self-care. That's I'm good enough for this. I deserve this.
Exactly.
I'm caring for myself, right?
Yes.
And the second point would be re-education, learning about the 4 key stressors. What are they? What is functional medicine? How do you get to the root cause and reverse it from the cause itself, and allow the body to heal itself? Because our immune system is just not reproducible. It's phenomenal if you actually give it what it needs. And I could tell you story after story. And I know even since I've gotten more awareness about my immune system, I can't even I literally can't tell you the last time I had a cold.
Mhm.
So it's that strong, I believe, for probably most of us, especially if we can stay out of the chronic disease category. That's when you get into trouble, is when the inflammation and all of the things from excessive stress has taken its toll. And even then, it can be reversed. But yes, it does take more motivation and a
Mhm.
slower process at that point, but it can be done. So re-education and prioritizing that, and that might mean even putting more of your income toward that, because I know we're trapped in these health insurance systems that
I
doesn't
know.
pay for things, but like I say, pay now or pay later. And then the third piece would be the importance of realizing connection to yourself, your community and others, your relationships, and in nature. And what I mean by self is that inner self-care.
Mhm.
Who am I? Why am I here? I'm not just a floating object in the universe. And while we may have devoted a lot of time to raising our children or getting our careers going when we were young, et cetera, this me time, what do I need now going forward? Because your children can leave in your 40s and 50s, and you
Right.
might live another 50, 40 years,
Mhm.
depending on
Exactly.
how. So it's not just about the number of years, it's about quality of life. It's about not suffering through that. It's about not dumping your whole life savings into the healthcare system, right? Knowing what you want. So I know that connection is just scientifically shown to be vitally important. So the social isolation we've gone through in the past year, there's a whole level of problems that's just not really on the table that the
Mhm.
public's not aware of, but that is really detrimental to your health and well-being. And I would add this: to the degree that you get in touch with your own worth as a woman and value, you will be more selective about your relationships. Because I'm not
Exactly.
suggesting you just jump into toxic relationships for the sake of having connection. You
Right.
have to be clear about what is important to you,
Mhm.
and having those groups of women you can connect with, or some couple close friends you can talk to, getting
Yeah.
out in nature together, exploring. And that's why I want to take many of my programs that I'm building here is in community, so that people are not just isolated, but all of that is about self-care. So that's
Yes.
kind of like
I love those. Yeah.
to think
Because I
about.
keep hearing about the take a warm bath, all of those things,
Yeah.
are good, as you said, but these are truly valuable.
Right, because when we change our priorities, we'll
Mhm.
make time for those things we
Exactly.
do, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So, Valencia, how can our viewers learn more about your services?
Okay.
Work
Yes.
with people from, like you said, telehealth. So can
Mhm.
you work with people who don't live where you live?
Okay. Yes. So I was actually doing some telehealth before COVID because I'm licensed. Well, first of all, California is a huge state, and Illinois is where I'm from. And I've had my
Okay.
license in Illinois since 1981. I believe that was 1981. I have to think about 85. No, it was
Okay.
1985. And so in that journey between being the ophthalmologist and moving on, I became proficient at technology. Like even when Zoom started in 2011, I was on Zoom. So
Wow.
that helped things when we had the changes and the lockdown and all that. I could still reach people. And I'm not a primary care doctor, so you have to have a primary care doctor, but I am able to do a lot of things that you won't be able to, have done because of the functional medicine piece. And so the telehealth works, probably 95% of my services now are to throughout California and Illinois, because those are
Mm.
where I have my licenses. I am thinking about this year, I'm going to pay attention to where I want to expand the licensures. That's for medical, that's for being able to run tests, that's for being able to give medical advice, et cetera. So I'll
Okay.
have one-on-one opportunities for personalized medicine, and then medical groups you can do. And
Okay.
I would have to, talk about that separately. But then also, I am having these educational programs that, while I don't give individual medical advice, I'm able to help people understand the 4 key stressors, understand what they need to think about, how they can go access their own, at least with the guidance of re-education, understand how to address the key stressors in themselves from anywhere in the world. Because I have 3 health coaches, health coaching programs, and you don't have to be in my state of licensure for education. It just has to do with ordering you a specific test and giving medical advice. That's where you have to live in a state of licensure. But for many of the programs I'm building this summer, it's community, it's self-empowerment. It goes back to that first point about owning your own health empowerment and prioritizing your re-education. You'd be surprised how much you can do if you had the right knowledge.
Right,
just on your own.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so it's about helping women to empower themselves around their health and being aware, so they can prevent these things. And then in my free gift offering, I'm actually talking about the 4 key stressors.
Okay,
And
I was just going to ask you about that. So go ahead and tell us about your.
Okay. Yeah, so in that gift, and you can, you'll make that available, is people can, by opting into the email list, you'll be on my list for future programming and webinars and this, education wellness piece I'm building out. I call it the Midlife Women's Health Reset.
Okay.
And I have a webinar in there that's about 45 minutes on the key stressors in real life, a patient or client case examples.
Okay.
And then there is a online questionnaire on the 4 key stressors you can take to see which of the 4 key stressors predominantly affect you. And if you go through that whole process of just taking the questionnaire or the assessment, you have an option to schedule a free 15-minute discovery session with me to go over that with
wonderful.
you. And then the third thing in that gift is a mini ebook that is talking about the 4 key stressors. So it's a short ebook. It's very concise, but to the point, and really will give you a good overview without having to read a whole book or anything like that. But it's called the 4 key stressors ebook. So all of that is in the free gift.
Very generous of you. Thank you. And for the audience, all you have to do is click on the button below this video and it'll take you right to Valencia's free gift. I really enjoyed this. It's kind of my area of interest as well. So I really enjoyed it. So I want to thank you so much for being here and for all your knowledge and expertise that you shared with us today.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Thank you.
And also for the audience, I want to thank you also for being a part of It's My Time Now mini summit. And do stay tuned for our next interview, where another expert will be sharing her unique point of view about redesigning your life on your terms. Bye for now.
Bye.